Out past the maps and into the trees, hunters chase more than just game. They enter ancient ground where instincts matter more than gear. These are places shaped by weather, silence, and things no guidebook explains. From a botched trailer latch in the grizzly country to a blood trail that led nowhere, expect the unexpected in every story. Sometimes the danger isn't the terrain or the animal, but the timing and the missteps. For those who've survived, the memories rarely fade, and for those who didn't, the woods remember. In this video, we explore 6 chilling hunting stories where survival was never guaranteed. The subalpine forest west of Fort Nelson, British Columbia, had always been reliable hunting territory for Braden Keller and his crew. The dense patches of timberland, intersected by natural bogs and meadows, provided the perfect habitat for the massive bull moose that wandered through during their seasonal migrations. Fort Nelson itself sat at the edge of the northern Rocky Mountains, a gateway town where the Alaskan highway carved through wilderness that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. The area had been logged selectively over the decades, creating a patchwork of mature forest and regenerating clear cuts that wildlife favored. Braden Keller, 46 years old and weathered by decades of guiding hunters through British Columbia's backcountry, had been running moose hunts through this particular drainage for 6 consecutive years. His reputation as a careful, methodical guide had earned him steady clients who returned season after season. The hunting party that assembled on June 29, 2025, included familiar faces: Marcus Trudeau, a machinist from Edmonton who had booked the same week for 3 years running; Dennis Kalowski, a retired oil worker who claimed this trip was his annual escape from civilization; Tyler Marsh, the youngest member at 24, whose enthusiasm for hunting sometimes exceeded his attention to detail; and Logan Page, a 31-year-old forestry technician from Prince George, who had joined the group the previous year and quickly proven himself to be a skilled tracker and reliable hunting partner. The group had established their base camp near a known travel corridor where bull moose traditionally move between feeding areas. Braden had positioned the camp strategically downwind from the bog where fresh signs indicated recent moose activity. The hunters had arrived with proper gear: 300 Winchester Magnum rifles, quality optics, and the kind of equipment that suggested serious investment in their hunting success. Everything about the setup followed the protocols that had worked for years. However, something felt different. The bait stations they had established remained untouched despite fresh tracks in the surrounding mud. More concerning were the massive scats they discovered near the camp perimeter, clearly from a large grizzly bear. The droppings were recent, still dark and moist, indicating the animal had been in the area within the past day or two. Braden recognized the signs immediately and made the decision that would prove both correct and tragically insufficient. Bears and moose hunts were incompatible situations. While British Columbia allowed hunting of grizzly bears under specific licenses and seasons, this group held only moose tags. The presence of a large grizzly in their hunting area meant abandoning the location entirely. Braden explained to his clients that continuing the hunt would be irresponsible and potentially dangerous. The group agreed to break camp the following morning and relocate to another drainage system 40 miles south. The fatal mistake occurred during the pre-dawn hours of June 30th. Tyler Marsh had been assigned the task of securing the ATV trailer that hauled their gear between hunting locations. The trailer, loaded with camping equipment and processing supplies, was typically latched and chained to prevent wildlife from accessing food scents. Tyler later admitted he had been distracted by the early morning routine and had forgotten to properly secure the trailer latch. The noise began around 4:30 a.m. just as the first gray light filtered through the forest canopy. Initially, the sounds seemed like typical camp settling or perhaps a small animal investigating their equipment. But the disturbance escalated quickly into the unmistakable sounds of large-scale destruction. Metal crashed against metal, followed by the splintering of wood and the distinctive huffing sounds of an agitated bear. The grizzly that emerged from the timber was enormous, later estimated at over 900 pounds. Its massive shoulders and distinctive hump marked it as a mature bear, likely in its prime years. The bear had been drawn to the camp by the scent of bacon grease that had been carelessly disposed of near the fire pit the previous evening. The improperly secured trailer had provided easy access to the concentrated food odors that had attracted the animal. Braden Keller responded to the situation with the experience of a professional guide. He immediately reached for his .45-70 lever-action rifle, a weapon chosen specifically for its stopping power in bear encounters. He shouted warnings to the other hunters while attempting to position himself between the bear and the tents where his clients were sleeping. His actions were textbook perfect, following every protocol he had learned and taught others. The bear, however, was beyond deterrence. Whether startled by human activity or simply committed to defending what it perceived as its food source, the animal charged directly toward the camp. Braden managed to fire one shot, striking the bear in the shoulder but failing to stop its momentum. The wounded animal became even more aggressive, its pain and adrenaline driving it into a focused rage. Marcus Trudeau emerged from his tent carrying a .44 Magnum revolver, a sidearm he had carried for years as backup protection. He fired 3 rounds at close range, with at least one bullet finding its mark. Dennis Kalowski joined the fight with his own handgun, a .357 Magnum, that he had practiced with extensively. Both men were experienced with firearms and familiar with high-stress situations from their work backgrounds. The bear's response was swift and devastating. Despite multiple gunshot wounds, the animal attacked with terrifying efficiency. Braden Keller was struck first, the bear's massive paw connecting with his chest and sending him crashing into a tree. Marcus Trudeau was caught as he attempted to reload, the bear's jaws closing around his torso before he could chamber another round. Dennis Kalowski managed to fire 2 more shots before the bear reached him, but the wounds only seemed to enrage the animal further. Tyler Marish, awakened by the gunfire and screaming, made a desperate decision to escape. He rolled out of his tent and sought cover in a shallow drainage wash 30 yards from the main camp. Armed with a 10mm Glock pistol, he remained hidden while the attack continued above him. But the bear, driven by frenzy, eventually followed the scent trail leading downhill. Tyler attempted to defend himself, firing several rounds as the grizzly closed in, but the terrain gave him no advantage. His body was later found in the wash, his pistol empty beside him. His attempts to hide had delayed the inevitable, but not prevented it. Logan Page, the 5th member of the hunting party, had left camp before dawn to scout a nearby ridge. From a distance, he heard the echo of gunfire and distant shouts, but assumed it was the others taking early shots at a moose. It wasn't until he returned mid-morning that he realized something was terribly wrong. As he approached the camp, the destruction came into view. Torn tents, scattered gear, and the unmistakable signs of a violent struggle. What he didn't realize was that the bear, though injured and enraged, had never strayed far. Drawn once again by the lingering scent of blood and human presence, it circled back toward the ruined site. Logan never had the chance to defend himself. Tracks and blood patterns later indicated that he was ambushed just as he neared the perimeter. His body was found partially concealed under broken limbs and moss. about 20 yards from the main camp, his rifle slung but unfired. It wasn't until 2 days later that the tragedy was uncovered. Another group of hunters passing through the drainage spotted a shredded tent from a ridge and went down to investigate. What they found was a scene of unspeakable carnage. 5 men dead, their bodies scattered across the area, all bearing the unmistakable trauma of a grizzly attack. The subsequent investigation pieced together the events from physical evidence and the positions of the bodies. With no survivors, it was left to wildlife officers, forensic analysts, and tracker dogs to reconstruct the timeline. The improperly secured trailer, combined with the carelessly discarded bacon grease, had triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. One preventable mistake had lured a top predator into direct conflict with a seasoned hunting team, and none of them made it out alive. 5 men, armed and experienced, lost to the unforgiving wild. Their story became a somber reminder of the razor-thin margin between control and chaos in bear country. The forest eventually grew silent again, but the echoes of that morning would linger for years in the minds of those who came upon the aftermath, and in the hunting community that mourned the loss of 5 of its own. The pine and hardwood forests on the outskirts of Columbus, Mississippi, had harbored wild boar populations since the 1940s, when escaped domestic pigs began breeding with introduced European boar. By October 1998, these feral swine had established themselves throughout Lowndes County, creating both agricultural problems and hunting opportunities. The thick understory of kudzu and native brush provided perfect cover for animals that had grown increasingly intelligent and aggressive over successive generations. James Drayton had been hunting these woods for over 15 years, developing a reputation around Columbus for his unconventional but effective methods. His approach to wild boar hunting involved night expeditions, using powerful flashlights taped to rifle barrels to spot the nocturnal animals when they emerged to feed. The technique was legal under Mississippi regulations, but required steady nerves and quick reflexes that most hunters preferred to avoid. On October 12, 1998, James partnered with Anthony Blevins, a longtime friend who shared his enthusiasm for challenging hunts. Both men carried 12-gauge shotguns loaded with buckshot, weapons chosen for their stopping power at close range. They had scouted the area during daylight hours, identifying game trails that showed heavy boar traffic near a natural clearing where acorns provided abundant food. The hunters positioned themselves along a well-used trail around 10:30 p.m., settling into makeshift blinds constructed from fallen logs and brush. James had attached a powerful spotlight to his shotgun barrel using electrical tape, while Anthony carried a handheld light for backup illumination. The night was unusually quiet, with minimal wind that helped carry sounds through the dense forest. Around 2:40 a.m., James detected movement behind a pile of deadfall timber approximately 50 yards from his position. The beam of his flashlight revealed a large boar moving erratically through the shadows, its distinctive tusks catching the light as it rooted through leaves and debris. The animal appeared to be a mature male, estimated at over 200 pounds, with a scarred hide that indicated years of territorial battles. James shouldered his shotgun and took careful aim, accounting for the distance and the animal's movement pattern. His shot echoed through the forest, but the boar disappeared immediately into the thick underbrush. Both hunters listened intently for the sounds of a wounded animal, but heard nothing except the settling silence that followed the gunshot. The hunters waited 15 minutes before investigating the shot location, following standard protocol for tracking potentially wounded game. James approached the area where the boar had been feeding, searching for blood signs or other evidence of a hit. The ground showed clear disturbance where the animal had been rooting, but no indication that the shot had connected. Anthony suggested they continue watching the area, reasoning that other boars might still use the trail during the remaining hours of darkness. James agreed, and both men returned to their blinds to wait for additional opportunities. The forest gradually returned to its normal nighttime sounds, with owls calling and small mammals rustling through the underbrush. The attack came from an unexpected direction. Instead of approaching along the established trail, the boar had circled through dense cover and emerged from a thick brush directly behind James's position. The animal moved with surprising speed and stealth, covering the distance to the blind in seconds rather than minutes. James first became aware of the danger when he heard heavy breathing and the sound of something large moving through the vegetation immediately behind him. He turned awkwardly in his cramped position, trying to bring his shotgun to bear while untangling himself from the brush pile that had concealed him. The boar was already committed to its charge, driven by territorial instincts and possibly the stress of the earlier gunshot. The animal struck James in the left thigh with devastating force, driving one tusk completely through his jeans and into the muscle beneath. The impact knocked him backward into his blind, scattering equipment and destroying his carefully constructed concealment. Pain shot through his leg as the tusk penetrated tissue and scraped against bone. Anthony responded immediately to his friend's screams, emptying his shotgun into the brush where the boar had disappeared after the initial attack. His rapid fire was more instinctive than aimed, but the combination of noise and buckshot was sufficient to drive the wounded animal away from the immediate area. The boar crashed through the underbrush, finally succumbing to its injuries approximately 100 yards from the attack site. The two hunters faced a 2-mile trek to reach their vehicle, with James unable to bear weight on his injured leg. Anthony fashioned a crude crutch from a fallen branch and supported his friend during the slow journey through darkness. James maintained consciousness throughout the ordeal, though blood loss and shock made the experience increasingly difficult. The injury required extensive medical treatment, including surgery to repair damaged muscle and tissue. James retained full use of his leg, but nerve damage left his left foot with permanent numbness and reduced mobility. The experience marked the end of his boar hunting career, as he later explained that the animals had proven too intelligent and unpredictable for his comfort. Anthony continued hunting wild boar for several more years, but never again attempted night hunting. He often recounted the story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pursuing dangerous game in low-light conditions, emphasizing how quickly a routine hunt could become a life-threatening situation. The boreal forest surrounding Norway House, Manitoba, provided an ideal habitat for the massive moose that migrated through the region each fall. Located on the northern shore of Lake Winnipeg, this area had supported indigenous hunting traditions for centuries before becoming a destination for modern sport hunters. The transition between dense forest and open marshland created perfect conditions for calling moose during their September rutting season. Evan LaForge had been hunting this particular location for over 8 years, drawn by its reputation for producing trophy-class bulls. The 42-year-old electrician from Winnipeg made annual pilgrimages to the area, often hunting alone to maximize his flexibility and minimize disturbance to the animals. His methodical approach and patience had resulted in several successful harvests over the years. On September 18, 2010, Evan established his calling position near the edge of a large marsh, approximately 3 miles from the nearest road access. The location offered excellent visibility across the wetland while providing cover from the surrounding spruce and poplar forests. He had arrived before dawn, carrying his .308 Winchester rifle equipped with a variable scope mounted on a portable tripod. The morning conditions were perfect for moose calling. A light frost had eliminated most insect activity, while a gentle breeze carried scent away from his position. Evan began his calling sequence around 6:30 a.m., using a birch bark call to imitate the sounds of a cow moose in estrus. The technique required patience and skill, as bulls could approach from any direction depending on wind conditions and terrain features. After 30 minutes of intermittent calling, Evan detected the sounds of a responding bull. Heavy footsteps and the distinctive sound of antlers striking trees indicated a large animal moving through the forest approximately 200 yards away. The bull's approach seemed cautious but determined, following the pattern typical of mature males during the rutting season. Evan positioned himself behind a large spruce tree, using its trunk for both concealment and rifle support. He maintained visual contact with the marsh edge while listening for sounds that would indicate the bull's location. The animal's approach seemed to stall about 100 yards from his position, leading Evan to believe the bull had detected something suspicious. The hunter decided to remain motionless and wait for the bull to commit to crossing the open marsh. This strategy had worked effectively in previous years, as patient hunters were often rewarded when impatient animals finally revealed themselves. Evan estimated the bull's weight at over 800 pounds based on the sounds of its movement through the forest. The attack came without warning from an entirely unexpected direction. Instead of approaching from the marsh side as anticipated, the bull had circled through dense cover and emerged from the thick brush directly behind Evan's position. The animal was moving at full speed, either fleeing from some perceived threat or responding aggressively to the calling sounds. Evan's first indication of danger was the sound of heavy footsteps directly behind him, followed immediately by the sight of massive antlers appearing through the vegetation. The bull was committed to its path and showed no signs of slowing or changing direction. The animal appeared to be running blind, focused on reaching the marsh rather than attacking the hunter. The collision was devastating. The bull struck Evan with the full force of its momentum, sending him flying 15 feet through the air before he crashed into a fallen log. His rifle was torn from his hands and buried beneath scattered leaves and debris. The impact knocked him unconscious immediately, leaving him unaware of the bull's continued path toward the marsh. Evan regained consciousness approximately 20 minutes later, disoriented and in considerable pain. His left ankle was twisted severely and his ribs ached from the impact with the log. Equipment was scattered across a 40-foot radius, with his rifle stock visibly cracked and the scope mounting system completely destroyed. The bull was nowhere to be seen, having apparently continued its original path toward the marsh and disappeared into the forest on the opposite side. Evan found massive hoof prints in the soft ground that confirmed the size of the animal that had struck him. The tracks indicated a bull of exceptional size, likely weighing over 900 pounds. The journey back to his vehicle required over 4 hours due to his injured ankle and the need to recover scattered equipment. Evan fashioned a makeshift walking stick from a fallen branch and made slow progress through the forest. His rifle was functional but required professional repair to restore accuracy and reliability. Upon returning to Winnipeg, Evan discovered that his account of the incident was met with skepticism and outright disbelief. Fellow hunters suggested he had fabricated the story to explain his lack of success and damaged equipment. Some acquaintances joked that he had simply fallen while carrying his rifle, creating an elaborate tale to cover his embarrassment. The damaged rifle and persistent limp provided physical evidence of the encounter, but many people remained unconvinced that a moose had actually collided with him. Evan eventually stopped discussing the incident, finding that the story created more problems than it solved. His hunting companions preferred to focus on successful harvests rather than unusual accidents. The experience reinforced Evan's belief that solo hunting, while offering certain advantages, also carried significant risks. He continued hunting moose in subsequent years, but never again positioned himself alone in locations where large animals might approach from multiple directions. The incident became a personal reminder of how quickly outdoor activities could become dangerous, even for experienced hunters in familiar territory. The backwaters of Lake Martin, Louisiana, presented some of the most difficult alligator hunting conditions in the region. Situated near the western edge of the Atchafalaya Basin, its cypress swamps and winding waterways supported one of the densest alligator populations in North America. By May 2007, nuisance alligator control had become a growing concern as human development increasingly encroached on traditional wetland habitats. Dustin Harville had been hunting alligators professionally for over 15 years, developing a reputation throughout southern Louisiana for his ability to remove problem animals from residential and agricultural areas. The 41-year-old contractor supplemented his income through nuisance alligator contracts, using specialized techniques adapted to the unique challenges of swamp hunting. On May 18, 2007, Dustin received a call from a landowner near the Lake Martin Wildlife Management Area. The property owner reported that a large alligator had been observed near his livestock pens, showing unusual boldness in approaching domestic animals. Local wildlife officials had issued a nuisance permit, allowing the removal of the problematic reptile. Dustin enlisted his cousin Mike Harville to assist with the nighttime hunt, as alligator hunting required coordinated efforts between spotlight operators and shooters. Mike had accompanied Dustin on dozens of previous hunts, developing the teamwork necessary for safe and effective alligator removal. Both men understood the dangers inherent in hunting large reptiles in their natural habitat. The hunters arrived at the property around 10:30 p.m., launching a shallow draft boat into the dark waters of the backwater slough. Dustin carried a Remington 870 shotgun loaded with slugs, while Mike operated a powerful spotlight capable of illuminating targets at considerable distances. Their strategy involved locating the alligator's eyeshine and approaching within an effective shooting range. The boat moved slowly through the narrow channels, with Mike scanning the water surface for the telltale red glow of alligator eyes. The spring evening was warm and humid, with minimal wind that helped carry sound across the water. Cypress trees draped with Spanish moss created an otherworldly atmosphere as they navigated deeper into the swamp. Around midnight, Mike's spotlight revealed the distinctive pattern of nostrils and eyes floating motionlessly near the opposite shore. The alligator appeared to be exceptionally large, with its head measuring approximately 18 inches in length. Based on established formulas, both hunters estimated the animal at over 10 feet in total length. Dustin positioned himself in the bow of the boat while Mike maintained the spotlight beam on the target. The alligator remained perfectly still, exhibiting the behavior typical of large reptiles during nighttime hunting. Dustin had made similar shots hundreds of times, and the distance appeared well within his effective range. The attack occurred as Dustin stepped forward to improve his shooting angle. The alligator, which had appeared motionless and unaware, suddenly exploded from the water with incredible speed and power. The animal's massive jaws clamped down on the shotgun barrel, wrenching the weapon from Dustin's hands with irresistible force. The impact of the attack knocked Dustin backward into the boat, where he landed heavily against the aluminum hull. The alligator disappeared beneath the surface, taking the shotgun with it into the dark water. Mike immediately fired his backup weapon, a .357 Magnum revolver, but the shot missed its target as the reptile submerged. Both hunters spent the next hour searching the area with their spotlight, hoping to locate either the alligator or the lost shotgun. The weapon represented a significant financial loss, but more importantly, its disappearance left them questioning their understanding of alligator behavior. Neither hunter had previously witnessed such a calculated and aggressive response from their quarry. The search proved fruitless, as the alligator had apparently moved to deeper water or taken refuge in underwater cover. The shotgun was never recovered despite return visits to the area over the following weeks. Dustin eventually replaced the weapon but continued to speculate about the unusual behavior he had witnessed. The incident forced both hunters to reconsider their approach to alligator hunting. They had previously viewed the reptiles as predictable animals that responded to stimuli in consistent ways. The calculated nature of the attack suggested a level of intelligence and planning that challenged their assumptions about alligator behavior. Dustin borrowed his brother's 12-gauge shotgun for the remainder of the hunting season, but the experience had shaken his confidence in familiar techniques. He began approaching alligator hunting with increased caution, assuming that large reptiles might be more aware and calculating than previously believed. Mike discontinued alligator hunting after the Lake Martin incident, citing his discomfort with the unpredictable nature of the animals. He often recounted the story to other hunters, emphasizing how quickly a routine situation had become dangerous. His account frequently included speculation about whether the alligator had deliberately planned the attack. The property owner eventually hired a different hunter to address the nuisance alligator problem. Dustin learned later that the replacement hunter had successfully removed a 12-foot alligator from the same area, but no trace of the missing shotgun was ever found. The incident became a cautionary tale about the intelligence and unpredictability of large alligators in their natural habitat. The hardwood forests in the mountains outside Asheville, North Carolina, provided excellent habitat for white-tailed deer during the late muzzleloader season. November 2019 brought ideal hunting conditions to the region, with moderate temperatures and sufficient precipitation to maintain active deer movement patterns. The mountainous terrain created natural funnels and travel corridors that experienced hunters could exploit during the final weeks of the season. Amanda Radley had been hunting these mountains for over 12 years, developing detailed knowledge of deer behavior and movement patterns throughout the area. The 35-year-old nurse practitioner often hunted with her younger brother Drew, a 28-year-old Forest Service technician whose work provided additional insight into wildlife habits and terrain features. On November 23, 2019, the siblings established hunting positions along a ridge system known for producing mature bucks during the late season. Both hunters carried .50 caliber muzzle loaders, traditional weapons that required careful shot placement and offered only single-shot opportunities. The late muzzleloader season attracted serious hunters who appreciated the challenge of primitive weapons. Drew positioned himself near a saddle between two peaks, while Amanda took a stand overlooking a steep draw that funneled deer movement between bedding and feeding areas. The hunting strategy relied on their knowledge of established deer trails and the likelihood that pressure from other hunters would push animals toward less accessible terrain. Around 9:30 a.m., Drew fired a shot at a large buck that had appeared briefly in thick cover approximately 75 yards from his position. The deer bounded away immediately after the shot, showing no obvious signs of being hit. However, Drew discovered fresh blood at the location where the deer had been standing, indicating a successful hit despite the animal's rapid departure. Amanda joined her brother to begin tracking the wounded deer, following standard procedures for recovering the muzzleloader shot game. The blood trail appeared consistent with a solid hit, showing bright red droplets that occurred at regular intervals. Both hunters felt confident that the deer had been mortally wounded and would be found within a reasonable distance. The tracking proved more challenging than anticipated as the blood trail led through increasingly difficult terrain. The deer had apparently climbed directly up a steep slope, forcing the hunters to navigate loose rock and dense laurel thickets. Fresh snow that had fallen during the night made the blood sign more visible, but also made footing treacherous. After 3 hours of careful tracking, the blood trail led the hunters into a rocky area characterized by large boulders and deep crevices. The terrain was unlike anything they had encountered during previous hunts in the area, with formations that seemed almost cave-like in their complexity. The blood sign continued to appear sporadically, leading them deeper into the rocky maze. Amanda discovered the first deer leg wedged between two large stones, the limb completely stripped of meat down to the bone. The leg appeared fresh, with tissue still warm to the touch, but the extensive damage suggested predation rather than simple wounding. Both hunters immediately became more alert, recognizing that they had encountered evidence of a large predator. Drew raised his reloaded muzzleloader and began scanning the surrounding rocks for signs of whatever had claimed their deer. The rocky terrain provided numerous hiding spots for large predators, while the complex acoustics made it difficult to pinpoint the source of any sounds. Amanda suggested they should abandon the tracking effort and return to safer terrain. The decision to continue tracking proved to be a mistake that both hunters would regret. The blood trail led them deeper into the rocky area where they discovered additional evidence of predation. Scattered bones and hide fragments suggested that multiple deer had been killed in the vicinity, creating what appeared to be a feeding area for a large carnivore. As afternoon shadows lengthened, the hunters realized they had become disoriented within the rocky maze. The terrain all appeared similar, with few distinguishing landmarks to guide their return route. Their GPS units provided general directional information but could not navigate the complex three-dimensional maze of boulders and crevices. Both hunters agreed to return to their vehicle and abandon the tracking effort. However, finding their way out of the rocky area proved more difficult than anticipated, requiring several hours of careful navigation through increasingly challenging terrain. The temperature dropped significantly as evening approached, adding urgency to their situation. They eventually located their truck just as darkness settled over the mountains. Both hunters were exhausted from the demanding terrain and the stress of their experience. Amanda expressed her intention to give up hunting, citing the disturbing nature of what they had discovered in the rocky area. That night, while camping near their vehicle, Amanda heard the sound of large animals moving through the surrounding forest. Drew observed what appeared to be eyeshine in the tree line, suggesting the presence of a large predator. The sounds persisted throughout the night, making it difficult for either hunter to sleep soundly. Although neither reported feeling directly threatened, the possibility of a large predator nearby caused considerable unease. Both agreed they had likely wandered into the territory of a significant predator, possibly a black bear or mountain lion. They departed the area at first light, never recovering the deer that Drew had shot. Amanda followed through on her decision to stop hunting, selling her muzzle loader and gear within a month of the incident. She consistently refused to discuss the experience in detail, describing only that she had lost her enthusiasm for hunting. Drew continued hunting but never returned to the ridge system where they had encountered the predator sign. He often speculated about what they had discovered in the rocky area, suggesting that they had stumbled upon the feeding territory of a large carnivore. The experience reinforced his respect for the wildness that still existed in the North Carolina mountains. The incident became a cautionary tale about the importance of situational awareness during hunting activities. Both hunters had become so focused on tracking their deer that they had ignored obvious signs of predator activity until it was too late to avoid the dangerous situation. The frozen farmlands surrounding Little Falls, Minnesota, had provided reliable small game hunting for generations of local families. December 1990 brought particularly harsh weather to the region, with temperatures dropping well below zero and snow accumulating to depths that made vehicle access challenging. The combination of agricultural land and scattered woodlots created an ideal habitat for cottontail rabbits and other small game species. Willis Granger had been hunting these areas for over 20 years, developing an intimate knowledge of the terrain and animal behavior patterns. The 38-year-old mechanic often brought his teenage son Troy on weekend hunting trips, using the opportunities to teach practical skills and maintain family traditions. Their typical approach involved walking fence lines and brushy areas where rabbits sought shelter during winter months. On December 10, 1990, father and son loaded their .22 rifles and headed for a section of abandoned farmland near an old grain silo. The property had been vacant for several years, allowing natural vegetation to reclaim fields and creating excellent small game habitat. Fresh rabbit tracks in the snow indicated active populations despite the harsh weather conditions. They parked their truck near the deteriorating silo and began walking toward a grove of mature oak trees approximately half a mile away. The snow crunched underfoot, and their breath created visible clouds in the frigid air. Both hunters carried bolt-action rifles and wore heavy winter clothing that restricted movement but provided essential protection against the cold. After 2 hours of methodical hunting, they had managed to flush several rabbits but had not yet fired any shots. The animals were particularly wary, likely due to increased predator pressure during the harsh winter conditions. Willis suggested they continue toward a fence line where he had previously found good hunting. The encounter occurred without warning as they approached a slight depression in the terrain. A man appeared from behind a cluster of bare trees, wearing a faded Army surplus jacket and wool cap. He made no sound as he approached, and his sudden appearance startled both hunters. What immediately captured their attention was the large black Labrador at his side. The dog's eyes had been sewn shut with what appeared to be crude stitching, creating a disturbing sight that neither hunter could immediately comprehend. The animal moved carefully, but seemed to navigate effectively despite its obvious blindness. The stranger offered no explanation for the dog's condition and seemed uninterested in conversation. Willis attempted to engage the man in a typical hunter's conversation, asking about recent game sightings and local hunting conditions. The stranger simply nodded once and continued walking past them toward the deeper woods. Troy later described feeling increasingly uncomfortable as the man and his disabled dog disappeared into the trees without ever speaking. The hunters decided to continue their original plan, dismissing the encounter as merely unusual rather than threatening. Willis suggested that the man might be a local eccentric, or perhaps someone dealing with an injured pet in an unconventional manner. Troy remained uneasy, but followed his father's lead in continuing the hunt. The disturbing encounter with the stranger and his dog had shaken Troy more than he initially realized. As they continued hunting, the teenager found himself constantly looking over his shoulder and jumping at every sound. The extreme cold began affecting both hunters more severely, with Willis noting that their fingers were becoming numb despite heavy gloves, making rifle handling increasingly difficult. What started as minor disorientation gradually worsened as the afternoon progressed. The bitter wind had picked up, creating snowdrifts that obscured many of the landmarks they had noted earlier. The oak grove they had been approaching seemed farther away than expected, likely due to the deceiving effects of the flat, snow-covered terrain and the psychological impact of their unsettling encounter. Willis consulted his compass repeatedly, but the extreme cold was affecting the instrument's accuracy. The metal housing had contracted in the sub-zero temperatures, and condensation from their breath had fogged the glass face. Combined with the stress of the strange encounter and the effects of prolonged cold exposure, both hunters found themselves making poor navigation decisions. The disorientation persisted for nearly 4 hours, with both hunters becoming increasingly frustrated and concerned about their situation. The temperature continued dropping as afternoon approached evening, adding urgency to their need to locate their vehicle. Troy suggested they had somehow crossed onto the unfamiliar property, but Willis insisted they had not traveled far enough to leave the original hunting area. In reality, they had been walking in large circles, their judgment impaired by cold stress and the psychological impact of their earlier encounter. After taking time to warm their hands and clear the compass properly, Willis was able to establish a reliable direction toward their starting point. The return journey required careful attention to terrain features that had been obscured by blowing snow. Both hunters later acknowledged that the combination of extreme cold, stress from the disturbing encounter, and the featureless winter landscape had contributed to their navigation difficulties. They located their truck just as darkness began settling over the frozen fields. The vehicle was exactly where they had left it, near the grain silo that had served as their original landmark. The circuitous route they had taken during their disorientation had made their return approach seem different from their morning path. Troy never accompanied his father on hunting trips after that December day. He consistently refused to discuss the encounter in detail, mentioning only that something about seeing the deliberately mutilated dog had made him uncomfortable with hunting. Willis attempted to rationalize the incident as a combination of cold weather, fatigue, and the unsettling nature of meeting a disturbed individual in a remote territory. The experience became a source of ongoing tension between father and son, with Willis unable to understand his son's reluctance to continue their hunting tradition. Troy eventually moved away from Little Falls after graduating high school, maintaining minimal contact with his father and never returning to the area for hunting or any other outdoor activities. Willis continued hunting the same areas for many years afterward, but never again encountered the man with the blind dog. He occasionally mentioned the incident to other hunters, describing it as an encounter with someone who had clearly abused an animal. Most listeners agreed that such disturbing behavior would be unsettling to witness, especially in an isolated setting. The experience remained a troubling memory that highlighted how a single disturbing encounter could permanently affect someone's relationship with the outdoors.